Well, after being forced to wait for so long, I finally got around to watching Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and I gotta say, while I don't believe that it was this life-changing movie that people are claiming it to be, I thought it was an absolute banger. I loved pretty well every second of it, gave it a 10 out of 10, and today, I wanted to talk about that movie for you guys. We're gonna get into it with spoilers ahead in case you have not seen the movie. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels. Guys, you have to understand, man, first of all, before we get into it, I don't think on this channel I've made a video about a Sonic movie. I think I've had the channel after the second Sonic movie, but regardless, I have loved these movies so far. It's very difficult for me to get past some of the things that I don't like in the Sonic movies. I don't like the humans that are part of it, which they did a great job this time around, just keeping the humans to Robotnik for the most part. And I also still cannot get used to the voices. Sonic's okay, Tails sounds good, Knuckles is just awful, and Shadows ended up being okay, but there's a lot of voices. Like, it's so hard to beat the iconic Sonic voice, but I can't get past that because the movies so far have been great. I have loved every single one. You guys gotta understand, man, and I am not exaggerating when I say this, okay? This Sonic the Hedgehog, not this movie, Sonic the Hedgehog in general, is literally the most nostalgic thing humanly possible that I can experience. When I was watching the beginning of this movie, the music was hitting hard. I actually saw Shadow breaking out of that pod. It flooded me with memories as a kid because I grew up on Sonic. I grew up on these games. Shadow was such a cool character to me growing up. And I was legitimately watching this. Like, it was so cool. It was so well done. And I actually, it hit me in my heart a little bit. I wish I could play this for you on screen, but it would definitely get copyrighted. I don't know if I've spoke about this before, but one of my favorite TikToks that I've ever seen is they've done this with the Mario movie too, but specifically with Sonic Heroes, I saw one where they played the Harry Styles as it was, and then it gets all black and the tone of it just goes really, really dark and nostalgic, right? You're playing Sonic Heroes on a box TV with your Nintendo GameCube, and all of a sudden you're seeing the same thing as an adult with them teaming up in the movie theater. And it just it hits home for me, dude. It really, really does hit home for me. So I felt that same nostalgic feeling throughout the entirety of this movie. Shadow was awesome, Sonic was awesome, the action was awesome, and I want to talk about the entire plot. The only thing that is going to be out of order is the Shadow and Maria part, because to be honest with you, I have the plot in front of me here so I don't forget it, but I don't remember exactly where the Shadow and Maria storyline took place, so we're actually going to start with that, okay? And shockingly, this was the only part of the movie that I felt a little bit let down about. I don't know if let down's the proper word to use for this because I still think they did a really, really good job with it. It's just the problem was I was seeing so many things online, and this is my own problem, nothing against the movie. I've seen all these things talking about how people are going to be touched by this, Shadow and Maria. They're going to really dive into the story. It was touching. It was nice to see the relationship, but I didn't see nearly enough, and my expectations were too high from that. My own problem, I overconsumed online. It's nothing against the movie, but I unfortunately, because of that, was a little bit detached from those moments. Not detached, that's not the right word, man. That's not the right word, because I still loved it. I loved the spin that they did on it, okay? Shadow actually roller skating with Maria, them spending time together, Shadow actually smiling, and then we see Maria's death. It was all gut-wrenching, don't get me wrong. We see the backstory to Shadow, and they did it very, very well with Shadow walking through all of his memories, right? But I don't know, man. I was just expecting a little bit more for the way they were hyping up Shadow and Maria specifically. I thought it was so cool the way, the funny moments where she was drawing, a face on the thing that Shadow was captured in. Shadow was getting faster. They ended up crashing into a food cart. They're watching movies together, and Shadow is even at a point where he's worrying about, being a weapon. They're looking at the stars together. I would have liked it if they went more of the Sonic X route with it, where they dive into that soldier a little bit too, where I would have actually liked to see a soldier legitimately shoot Maria, but then again, I understand they can't do the same thing anymore. I would imagine they're just getting it around so kids can end up watching this movie. So I get it. I loved it, don't get me wrong. I was just expecting a little bit more, and that was really the only point of the movie where I think I was let down. So regardless, this brings us into the very beginning of the movie, and that being getting into it right away with Shadow being in that little pod that he's in. He's starting to wake up. We figure out that it's Eggman or Gerald hacking the system. Shadow starts to wake up, and we see the true power of Shadow, and this is where the movie shined. And I wish I could point them out for you because I already forget a ton of them, but the Easter eggs in here were just They were peak. They were on point, from like the animations of the way Shadow kicks people to the motorcycle with the way that he's handling his gun. It was all faithful and true to the games. Like, even to the point with the holograms at the beginning of the movie when they were like folding their arms and like tapping their foot like the old Sonic games, right? Like, the people who made this movie knew what they were doing, and you could tell that they were Sonic fans. It was great. Shadow was all like, man, like he was all in his true power, coming out, destroying all these soldiers. The music was phenomenal, and I actually liked Keanu Reeves voicing him. Like, that was okay. I still would have preferred the original Shadow voice, but I understand that's not possible. But regardless, the movie started off with a bang right away. But then the movie doesn't waste like any time at all, because we're then introduced to Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and the two people. And what I liked about this is they took the humans away from this for the most part of the movie. That was one of my biggest critiques when it comes to the other movies that we've seen. Just like Transformers, I want to see Sonic. I don't want to see a story about a wedding. Anything along those lines, right? Anyways, they have a little bit of a race. Gun drops down. Hey, we need you for mission. Here we go. And they talk about Team Sonic, Knuckles being like his goofy self, right? And they even jump out of the helicopter just like they did with SA2. They drop in, Shadow's destroying everything. And they did such a good job in this movie too, mixing in like the heartfelt, emotional moments with like just goofy moments where, hey, so where should we look for this guy? Explosions. Let's start with that. It captured that like fun Sonic feeling about it. And that's what this movie did so well, man. So they drop down. We see Shadow. Shadow absolutely annihilates them. I'm still on team. I don't understand why Shadow bending Knuckles' wrists was a huge attack. That was a thing that we saw in the trailer too. And I will say though, apparently there was a trailer, which I still have not watched yet, that had a bunch of spoilers. I was managed to stay away from those spoilers, whatever they were, which was great. I'm okay with that. So Shadow ends up destroying them all. It was really, really cool to see. We demonstrate Shadow's true power, and just the fight scene in general was great. Sonic chasing Shadow, Shadow on the motorcycle, Shadow actually picking up a pistol. It looked like it was straight out of the Shadow the Hedgehog game. It was an amazing callback to my childhood, man. And then we're brought into the next act of the movie, and there wasn't a ton that really went on there. There was a really fun callback to the Chow Garden. I was kind of like, really? That's how they're doing the Chow Garden? But it was kind of funny. They received the card to the Space Colony Arc in the Eclipse Cannon, and long story short, someone hacked Eggman's technology. They thought Eggman was coming over here, but long story short, we need to team up with Eggman. That was the entire story. There's not a ton to break down over there. And I loved Eggman in this movie. I loved Jim Carrey in this movie. I loved that he actually looked like Eggman in this movie. The mustache, he got the jacket. It was all like, they keep getting better at the callbacks to the original games. His introduction was funny. Jim Carrey did a great job as usual. And I was shocked, by the way, even in the first movie, that Jim Carrey did Eggman as well as he actually did. So it's fun. We see like the, hey, I don't want to team up with you, Egghead, but we're here. You tried to kill me twice. It's just like some really fun banter. I love Dr. Robotnik's assistant too. All of that is just funny to me. Now for the next part, there isn't exactly a ton to break down here too, because I broke down most of it because now I realize this is where Shadow's big callback was, because he was visiting the old, I guess the old like military base that he was in. For some reason I thought he was in space, but I could be remembering that wrong. It's been a long time since I watched it. But regardless, Shadow strolls in. We have the callbacks that I mentioned at the very beginning of the movie. It was perfect timing. I love the way they broke it all down. Shadow had an amazing story, but this is also where we're introduced to Gerald Robotnik. Shadow's working with him. Shadow ends up capturing everybody. Knuckles has a couple funny moments where he's like watching a scary movie. He got spooked, right? But Shadow ends up capturing everybody. Gerald is introduced to Dr. Robotnik. And I actually liked the way that, and it's weird to say like the actor chemistry, but it's Jim Carrey and Jim Carrey. Like, he was just funny, man. Them two together, I liked the comedy route of it. It was risky in my opinion. It was very, very risky because if you guys have known the story of Sonic, you would know kind of how serious Gerald Robotnik is. And of course, like, they made Eggman a lot stupider than we've seen him in the past, but it just works. It worked with Gerald. It worked with Eggman. I like that Shadow was the serious character. Shadow was hurt. Shadow had that tragic backstory. It was just all pretty fun. And I'm not going to break down anything for you that like Eggman and Gerald were doing, because they were just doing stupid stuff. I don't know what to tell you. And the other thing that I forgot to mention about that was Agent Stone is feeling left out because he has this weird relationship with Dr. Robotnik, which again, I thought was very funny. And I liked him in the movie, man. Usually I don't like those like weird side characters that are hanging around that just are purely there for comic relief. I enjoyed that, to be honest with you. But anyways, so we move on to the next scene, or the next act, where Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles get the two people, Tom and Maddie. I had to look over what was his name, Tom. That's how insignificant he is to me. Tom and Maddie to help a break into the vault with the military base, whatever it was, with the second key card that they need for the Space Colony arc. This is where I started worrying about the movie, but it all ended up being okay. I was like, no, I don't want people. I want to see Sonic. I want to see Eggman. They did okay because they had these things where they could just change shapes. And I'll bring this up now because something that they ended up doing, and actually I'll talk about that in a second, because Tom and Maddie go in, and something that I absolutely hated from the second movie. I hated it. I hated the sister. Randall was okay, but like, I don't know. I hated everything about that wedding scene. I hated the characters. I thought it was so insignificant to the movie that I wanted to watch that I did not like it at all. When they turned into them, I was like, not again, not again. The second time, it pulled me right out of the movie. Why am I watching a wedding and people being upset about it in a Sonic the Hedgehog movie? It's the same problem that I've had with Transformers. Why are we talking about people and their relationships? I want to watch robots fight. I want to watch Sonic spin and run. Is that so difficult? But thankfully, it was just for a minute. They just had the perfect scene. I was like, oh, okay, we're okay. We're okay. But then Tom and Maddie were okay. They went on their mission, and I'll talk about this now. This is the thing that I was going to touch on a second ago. They also end up transforming into this Agent Rockwell, who we've seen a couple other times, and Agent Jane from Breaking Bad. Every time I see her, I can't help but laugh because I just imagine... Huge spoiler for Breaking Bad. Skip like 20 seconds when my countdown goes, just in case, because it's such a big, magnificent show, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Every single time I see Agent Rockwell, I think of, I watched Jane die. And so, like, literally, every single time that I saw Jane, that comes into my mind. I don't giggle to myself, but, like, I go, like, like, I just think about it like it's been memed to death that it's just so funny. And I do like Jane every single time that we see her. And the reason I want to talk about Agent Rockwell is because I've seen pictures of her online where, like, people are just dogging on her. People are hating this character, and I'm like, what's the big deal? She's just, like, a military agent. And you know what? I'm actually shocked, too, that Sonic actually went there. And YouTube, I do not condone any of this. I think it is very, very wrong, YouTube. I'm very grateful to be on your platform. I can't believe that they actually did the joke where Robotnik is like, I can't believe this. A woman in the military. Like, I was like, oh my God, they actually went there. I thought that caught me off guard. But anyways, I don't get the hate for Rockwell. I like her, but maybe it's because I like Jane. I don't know the actor's name. I just know her as Jane. But anyways, it's a really fun, like, it's a really fun scene where you have the Robotniks dancing, Sonic breaking in, they end up getting trapped in a gravity thing, Knuckles end up saving the day, Sonic also end up saving the day with some debris falling on the humans. Like, it was just a really good scene. It ends up with Shadow coming in, taking the card, off to the Space Colony arc, off to the Eclipse Cannon. We're going to blow up the Earth. And in the meantime, with that, another thing that Tom ended up doing was transforming into the leader of Gun. And this is where they did this scene so good, too, where Shadow just strolls by and is like, oh, yeah. Just punches this guy, ends up kind of killing him. And this is where we see Sonic actually really, really hate Shadow. But Shadow had a little bit of a callback to when Maria died because it kind of reminded him. Like, it was okay, but I wish we could have dove into Sonic's anger just a little bit more, seeing a little bit of Dark Sonic maybe. I thought that would have been super cool, but that was a big moment. We weren't sure if Tom was dead. I didn't think he was going to be dead, but still, it was kind of on the table. And after that is where the movie really, really picks up because Sonic is done. Sonic is angry. Sonic wants to go after the Master Emerald. Has a little bit of a tense moment with Knuckles, and after a little bit of arguing, Knuckles ends up letting him actually go to the Master Emerald, but he sits down and he's like, well, you have to defeat a great warrior to take the Master Emerald. And I was like, no, not Wade. Not Wade. This movie's going so well, but I liked Wade because he was only there for just a second. I don't know how I feel about Wade, man, because the Knuckles show, and I made a whole video on it if you guys are interested. I hated the idea of how stupid they made Knuckles and how stupid they made Wade, but it was so stupid to the point that it was actually funny. I still don't really feel right about Wade, like, playing hockey with the Master Emerald. I don't know. Regardless, it was only for a second. It didn't take me out of the movie, just like the when they turned into Randall, and the other name's lady is escaping me at the moment. But Sonic ends up turning into Supersonic, fights Shadow. Shadow ends up turning into Supersonic, and I loved the way they did this fight scene. The music was great. The tension was there. The attacks were straight out of the video games, and I loved that. I don't know what you call it. Like, they captured that Sonic feeling when you're playing the games of, like, the fast travel. All of a sudden, they're fighting in Egypt, and you can even see them, like, traveling all over the world. The way they shot this, the way they created it was perfect. And again, doing Sonic justice perfectly. Something that I forgot to mention though is in between this, Shadow ended up using his energy to power up the Eclipse Cannon. Robotnik ends up saying he's going to wipe up the whole world. Eggman has a problem with that. But regardless, we're brought back to the fight, and Sonic, after channeling his inner anger, ends up actually overpowering Shadow, knocks him straight to the moon. And again, I loved the travel. The way they just created it. You guys, you watched the movie, you would know. If you play the Sonic games, you would know the feeling that I'm kind of describing, the picture that I'm painting here. I still wish, and I still think it would have been a perfect opportunity to bring up Dark Sonic, but Sonic doesn't bring the finishing blow on Shadow. This is where I have a little bit of a critique with the movie, because I thought that Shadow turned to good a little too quickly. I liked when it was something along the lines of Chris. That was something a little bit more relatable, but you don't know this guy. You don't know Sonic. It's this guy that you were just fighting. I don't get it. I think it was a little too quick, but I know that they probably had to continue on with the movie. I just would have liked to see something a little bit more from Sonic's story, or something entirely different that makes Shadow actually change sides, because Sonic sat down and he's like, well, I lost Longclaw, and Shadow could be like, who's Longclaw? But Shadow's like, all right, I've let my hate get the better of me, or whatever he was saying, right? So they start teaming up. We then cut to Dr. Robotnik and Gerald having the weirdest fight I've ever seen. And again, it was risky, but they pulled it off. The Robotnik stuff was goofy, funny, ridiculous. I actually, and I don't do this often at the movies, I laughed out loud when Gerald just, I don't know what it was, took out his little jetpack and was like, nee, and just blasted forward. It was so stupid. But then I was brought back into the moment with Sonic and Shadow whenever they transitioned into it. I don't know how they did it. They did it perfectly. Whatever it was, I don't know. They have this weirdest fight I've ever seen, and you have another cut where Gerald's just spanking Dr. Robotnik, and it's all funny. It ends with, you're killing a bug, man. Gerald gets flicked, and you hear, bzzzt, and that's it. He's dead. He's gone, right? But where the real gold was with Sonic and Shadow actually taking on all of those robots that we've seen from SA2. It resembled that final level. I would have liked to see the creature. I would have liked it to be a little bit more faithful to the original story, but I do appreciate the spin that they took on it. I know that they wanted to do their own thing. They didn't want to make it a copy and paste. I'm okay with that personally. Maybe I guess I just like the original story better, but regardless, they finally decided to use, and I know we've seen it with Green Hill Zone, but they finally decided to use in an action scene, Live and Learn. Where was this throughout the entirety of the Sonic movies? Why are we just getting a little Easter egg here and there? You want to fill the entire movie with Easter eggs, the most insignificant things that I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool, but music is where we draw the line. One of the most important things, why do we have Queen when you have all of the most amazing Sonic tracks that you could possibly bring into the game? It was nice to see Live and Learn. I like the spin they put on it, transitioning it into their own music for the movie. That was really well done. And man, once that started playing, once they teamed up, once those bots were coming out, that hit me my core too, man. That hit me my core, brought me straight back to my childhood. Dude, I am going to go back and I'm going to go see this with my mom, because my mom is just as nostalgic for Sonic, because as a kid, I made her sit down and watch me play Sonic for countless hours. To the point where she watched the first Sonic movie. She hasn't watched the second one yet. I don't know why. I don't recall. We just never got around to it. But she actually ended up feeling very nostalgic in the first Sonic movie. And I guarantee you, man, once Shadow comes on, because we have a lot of good memories, playing Shadow the Hedgehog, my mom thinking it was too violent. It was a great time. Great time. I can't wait to bring my mom to this movie. And for context, I saw it with my wife. But regardless, they end up defeating all of the robots. They end up steering the Eclipse Cannon away. Knuckles and Tails end up coming and save the day, saving Eggman. And I love that they added, it's an Easter egg, but at the same time, it's comedy genius when placed and writing in this movie. They miss the Earth and get the moon. If you know Sonic, you would know the joke there is because that was the original thing that happened in the game, is they blew up the moon. They just and took it out. Perfect. Perfect. Genius. Loved it. Sonic ends up fainting, or Shadow and Sonic were ended up protecting the Earth from a blast. They end up fading away. Shadow used all of his power, and Knuckles and Tails, Team Sonic, ended up saving the day. Knuckles saves both of them. They get down there, saved by the ring. Sonic apologizes. Team Sonic's all nice and better, and it appears to be that Shadow ended up passing away, like we've seen in, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it, whether it's for the game or the story. I know he lived in Sonic X, things like that. I wasn't sure if Shadow was actually going to survive, because it's a good way to end his story, man. It's a really good way, but I'm glad that he hasn't. But We're going to talk about the post-credit scene in a second because they kind of got into it like right away. They're back where they started at the beginning of the movie. They have a race. Sonic overshoots it completely, and we're brought into the post-credit scene. And this, I wasn't sure where they were going to go with it. I did not know. I'm selfishly hoping that we one day get a Meta-Rex movie, but I know it's a little bit far-fetched. I don't know how it's going to be because Eggman died. Jim Carrey's probably not coming back, right? Eggman is toast. Why Metal Sonic? I don't get it, but regardless, I'm here for it. When we don't see just one Metal Sonic, then we see many Metal Sonics, and I love the possibility of diving into a little bit more of a Sonic Heroes role. I think that'd be very cool. Maybe if you want to bring in all the characters from Sonic Heroes, I would love that. You could get the crap what... I have played Sonic through my entire life, and I'm having a blank at the big boss at the end of Sonic Heroes. That's going to bother me. I should know that. Regardless, the potential for what you could do with Sonic Heroes is really, really great. I love that Metal Sonic was the next villain that was teased. That has huge potential for the movie. I'm even talking back in like the old 2000 movie where I don't remember what year it came out, but like the very, very old Sonic cartoon, you could do something like that. I just remember it ending like there is only one Sonic, something like that. All of these movies are so nostalgic. But then Amy comes on. I knew that there was going to be a character reveal, and that character reveal is Amy. I'm happy to see her, and I gotta say, she looks great. She looks great. The design for her is arguably the best that I have seen out of all the Sonic characters brought into the series so far. I like Amy. I'm pro Amy. Happy to see the hammer come on. Again, hitting me in the nostalgic piece of my heart, but it was hyped to see. We got Metal Sonic and Amy coming up. I still want Team Chaotic more than anybody. I want to see what comedy gold these writers could bring to Team Chaotic. I think that'd be awesome, but hey, if these movies keep doing well, I'm sure we're going to keep getting more movies. I know there was an idea expressed about talking about a Mario and Sonic crossover Smash Bros. Movie or Mario Sonic in the Olympic Games. I'm here for all of them, man. But I do particularly like just the Sonic stories. Regardless, we do have another post-credit scene, and that is with Shadow ending up being alive. So he's going to be back in the gang. He's a good guy on Team Sonic now. They set up for another phenomenal movie that I cannot wait to watch. But things... Speaking of like Sonic movies that I believe everybody should watch, I did make a video talking about the Knuckles series, Season 1. I would love to have you guys check that out on the screen right here. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Take care.